Hello, everybody. This is Bruce from Oregon with the Bruce from Oregon Show. This is episode 0. It may be the first, it may be the last. We don't know. Let's find out. Today, we're going to be continuing our series on management best known practices, or management BKMs. And we are going to be discussing the topic of leadership and how to be a leader instead of being a boss, and the concept of servant leadership and how you can use it when you become a manager at your job. But before we get into that, we have some nice pictures here of some moose having fun. I really don't understand, for example, why... where's my mouse? There it is. Why is bathtub the second search result for mooses having fun? I mean, is a moose taking a bath that much fun? Apparently it is. I find this very interesting. Anyway, let's get into our session today. It should be a short one, although every time I say it'll be a short video, it ends up being like 30 or 40 minutes long. We'll see what we can do. Okay, so first up, I found this nice link from a place called the Lohman Company. These are certified public accountants and business consultants. Well, that's a 2-for-1 right there. So you can go to thelohmancompany.com and check out this article. We're going to avoid their AI chat because who knows what that would do. But they have this nice article called Tip, Be a Leader, Not a Boss. Now, when you work in corporate America, you may hear people say, well, we have a leadership team. There's leaders at our company. And, you know, when you talk to employees, they may say, well, my boss has me doing this, my boss has me doing that. What's the difference between these two terms? At first glance, you may think these two terms are synonymous. But really, what we're going to do is develop a framework where we have a different mindset about being a leader instead of just being a boss. Okay? So let's go through their article here. And like they mentioned, they say there doesn't seem to be a great difference between the definitions of a boss and a leader. But we're going to go through these key elements that distinguish leaders from others in top management, aka bosses. Okay, so let's go through their list. Number 1, they say leaders lead by example. Okay, and this is very good. This seems obvious, but people frequently disregard it. Yeah, if you've ever gone to work and you've seen people who just tell their employees what to do, they give them tasks, they give them orders, they ask for ETAs, or they set ETAs, they set target dates, and they just tell people what to do. And then when those people are done, they collect the information. Those are bosses, okay? Now, when we say leaders lead by example, what this means is that even if you're a manager, you should still be doing some sort of tip of the spear type of work for your team to sort of path clear the most difficult tasks or the most strategic objectives for your team so that your team can learn by example. And that way, if you as the leader spend a bunch of time, cutting through the jungle with your machete. This is an analogy. But if you do that, then the rest of your team, which presumably is more than one person, will be able to very effectively make progress once you're done. And when your team is making efficient progress versus yourself, that is an exponential level of growth in efficiency for your team. So they say employees pay more attention to what you do than what you say. Now, they'll pay attention to both, but yeah, exactly. Employees want to see what leaders and bosses are doing because in their minds, they're thinking, that's what I should be doing 5, 10, 15 years from now if I advance in this career path. So they say, for example, if you want your employees to be punctual and arrive to work or meetings on time, make sure you set a positive example by being on time yourself. I mean, this is kind of a terrible example because who cares when people get their work done? I don't care. If you want to live by grad school hours and you do a great job of getting your work done, I mean, that's fine. You want to sleep in and then stay up late. I don't really care. Now, obviously, where I work, you sort of live or die by your calendar. So you obviously can't sleep in and miss important meetings or collaboration events with other employees. So as long as you're doing that, I don't really care when you get your work done. But anyway, the example I would have given would be, let's say, we once had to take a large code base that we had developed using one set of APIs, and we needed to convert it into a new source code repository with a different set of APIs, but still the same software functionality. Okay. And there were no instructions for the new API. So what I did was I crafted what would have been the instructions for the old API, because we all knew how to code in this old API. So I wrote up exactly how we did the 10 or 12 things we did with this software that we needed from an infrastructure. Then I went to the team that was developing the new material for our new code base, and I said, please help me craft instructions for how these old instructions would look in your environment, just a one-to-one mapping. And I spent a bunch of time sort of doing detective work, Sherlock Holmesing out how to do that, and then writing it all out. And then I started by proof of concept transferring a few files of our source code. And at that point, I was confident that I could deploy this methodology, the instructions and the example code, to the other 3 or 4 people in my team that had the time to work on this project. And suddenly I had 3 or 4 people going full speed without having to figure out how to do anything. And we were able to transfer our code in record time. So that's the kind of leadership example I would give. I didn't just tell my team what to do, go transfer this code. I actually figured out how to do it myself for the first time. And then I deployed that learning to the rest of my team for scale out and efficiency. Let's go to number 2. Number 2 says bosses tend to give orders or issue demands. Yeah, that's what I was just saying. Leaders listen to their workers and peers. Yeah, listening is very important. They say, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and you should use them in, roughly that frag. You should listen twice as often as you talk. That's good advice. Okay. Leaders solicit ideas, recommendations, and feedback, and in doing so, show respect for the experience and expertise of others. That's right. One other thing you can do while you're talking to your employees, whether it's one-on-one or in a group setting, is if you're the most senior people or one of the most senior people in the meeting, you should wait till the end of the meeting or the end of the conversation to give your opinion about something or to ask follow-on questions that are more deeper level questions. Because what you really want to do is you want the employees to feel comfortable with having a discussion, having a debate, bringing up ideas, bringing up questions on their own without worrying about how you're going to react to it or worrying about, just letting you talk through the whole meeting and then they stay quiet. So we don't want that. Leaders pay attention to how they speak to employees, avoiding demands in favor of requests. Yeah, this is very interesting. A lot of times what I see is people giving out tasks. And sometimes these tasks are given out in an unsolicited manner. So someone will be writing notes for a meeting and they'll just say, somebody has a task. And I'm not even sure that person agreed that that was the correct task to do, or that they agreed that they are willing to do it. They might not even be in the meeting and somebody gives them a task. That's really terrible. So from my perspective, when I'm working with employees, the task that the employee is going to do needs to basically be, the best case is it's their idea. Or we've had a discussion and I say, what about XYZ? And they say, that's a good idea. So I say, okay, is that what you want to do? And if they say yes, then that becomes their task. So it's really them figuring out that that's the right task for them, not me making a demand on them. Number 3, leaders offer constructive criticism when needed in private. Yeah, so the platitude here is praise publicly and criticize privately. And that can be very good. In general, I don't try to look at things like I'm going to do criticism. Rather, what I want to do, if I'm talking one-on-one to an employee, is I want to figure out what to do next, because we can always look back and say like, oh, we screwed this up, we screwed that up, that was too slow, that wasn't good enough. That doesn't help. What we really want to do is, what are we going to do next? And what are the goals going to be that are measurable moving forward so that we can do a better job next time? And this implicitly creates constructive criticism, because if you say, what we're going to do next quarter is try to complete 6 Jira tickets. Well, if the employee is not stupid, okay? They know that if they only completed 2 Jira tickets in the last quarter, and we want to get to 6, that they got to step it up. So, I mean, you don't need to be berating. Nobody needs to go to someone and say, Steve, your shoe is untied. Do you know why it's important to tie your shoe? Because if you don't, you might trip and fall and hurt yourself. That's condescending. People are smarter than that. Just tell someone, hey, I noticed your shoe's untied. You don't need to berate them about it. The same thing goes with the tasks that you're giving the employees. Okay, let's see. We were in the bullet point 3 here. Humiliation is a poor motivator. Yeah, this gets to cognitive behavioral theory, which I don't have time in this video to go over in detail. But in cognitive behavioral therapy, positive reinforcement is statistically a far better way to get results than negative punishment. And I don't have all the time to go into what those, what does positive reinforcement mean? What does negative punishment mean? Maybe in a future video. But anyway, they say humiliation is a poor motivator. Few people will improve their job performance following a humiliating public scene. That's correct. As the old saying goes, praise in public and punish in private. Oh, see, I predicted the future. Lehman Company, call me. Similarly, good leaders make an effort to support and teach their employees. If issues must be addressed, they focus on finding solutions rather than dwelling on the problem. They solicit recommendations and ideas from their staff and listen to their input. Without sugarcoating or denying difficult issues, good team leaders instill optimism and a can-do spirit. Okay. Allowing employees to witness your frustrations or anger can generate fear and adversely affect morale. Yeah, this is very difficult because, I have had employees in my career, over the duration of my career, who, when I talk to them one-on-one, they like to sort of complain or vent or talk about all their problems, okay? And if I'm so sympathetic that I start venting and complaining and, talking about all my problems, like, I'm not really helping them as a manager and a leader at that point. Now, if I listen to them and I say, what can we do? Or is there anything I can do? Sometimes listening is all you need to do. Okay. And this is especially important for men who are managers, because men in general, we want to go find a solution to a problem and deploy it. But a lot of times when you're dealing with employees or human beings and you're having conversations, all the other person wants you to do is listen and understand what they're saying. That's it. You don't have to take any actions. Just internalize it. Maybe subconsciously in the future, there will be actions you can take or fine-tuning you can do with your team or something like that. But in general, sometimes you just need to listen. Number 5. That's where we are. Leaders are ongoing participants in team efforts. Okay, that's good. Rather than simply conducting weekly or monthly reviews where they pass judgment from on high, they stay consistently connected with projects and foster ongoing two-way communication. Yeah, I see this a lot. Where there will be a team, and suddenly some manager in the team says, we have to drop everything we're doing and make a status report in PowerPoint and go present it as status to some upper-level manager because they want to know what's going on. And it's like those people are just then receiving your information and passing judgment on it or making declarations or giving you more tasks. Those upper-level managers are not ongoing participants in the team efforts. This is why when I'm a manager, I only talk about the status or the progress of the team that I am in control of or that I am directly an ongoing participant with. So I sort of tend to ignore things that are outside the domain scope of my team. I don't worry about whether some other team, a different team, is doing a good job or not. If there's some big problem, you can always tell your manager about it. But in general, what you want to do is you want to apply your leadership to a place where you are an ongoing participant, not a place where maybe you're just like, are these people doing their job? I'm going to go see what their status is and give them some tasks because I know better than everybody else what to do. That's no good. Where are we here? Good leaders encourage their employees to be upfront about both their concerns and ideas. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Avoiding favoritism is key. Okay, this is interesting. A good leader might have personal favorites on staff, but takes care to keep personal preferences out of the mix in the workplace. Nothing can cause long-term resentment and creating damaging interpersonal relationship at work like playing favorites. Yeah, this is why it's important to do two things, I think. Number one, maybe on a quarterly basis or at a minimum an annual basis, you want to be talking to your employees about what their strategic goals are and interests in terms of their career, so that you understand that when opportunities arise, you can map those opportunities or gaps in the larger team with your employees. And keep in mind, this may require you to lose an employee. You may need to take an employee who strategically wants to someday work on some new technology and move them to a different team in order to make them more effective for your entire organization rather than just your personal team. When you prioritize your personal team above the things that are going to be beneficial to the individual and then to the company, okay, instead of yourself, then you're doing a bad job. You need to put the individual first, you need to put the larger organization second, and then you need to put yourself third, okay? And then the other thing is if you are constantly creating measurable objectives for your team, so every quarter, maybe every other quarter at a minimum, but every quarter, you want to know what are the measurable objectives that your individual team members are working towards. Because if they all have a nice, good set of objectives that they understand, then there's going to be less of this idea of playing favorites. Like, oh, you keep giving all the cool work to Jim, right? We don't want to do that. We want to make sure everybody has good, measurable objectives that align with their goals, that align with their skill set, that align with their experience. That we are not doing preference-based task management. You're doing, skill and preference-based task management rather than your personal favoritism. Number 7, a good leader doesn't feel the need to announce his or her position of authority. It's true. Rather, good leadership should be self-evident. Accordingly, a good leader avoids self-promotion and seeks recognition for the team rather than personal accolades. This is another one. I see a lot of people sometimes aggregate a bunch of information from people that either work for them or work adjacent to them that don't even report to them or are in a different team. And they aggregate that information and make a nice PowerPoint report with their name on it. So now suddenly they're, going after the big promotion, they're going after the visibility. And they're kind of throwing all those other people under the bus. I've seen that happen a lot. The other thing that can happen is different companies can have these different titles that are sort of publicly available. And some companies even, you don't get a publicly available title for your job position until you reach a certain level, like a higher level. And I think this is very bad. Like, I think, maybe if you have pay grades, either make everything private, like there's no titles, and you just keep all the pay grades private, or you don't have any titles and you make all the pay grades public. These fancy titles that you only give to certain people, they just create this feeling of a classist society within a company that is just terrible for morale. Like, it's no good. So I don't think that organizations should do that. Either give everybody basic titles and, hide the pay grades or make the pay grades public or something. I don't know. But I don't think it helps the organization be effective. Even the best leaders fall short of their ideals. Yeah, someone who's willing to recognize his or her personal mistakes and acknowledge them is demonstrating perhaps the most important characteristic of a true leader: humility. Yeah, this is correct. I mean, and you got to be careful here because obviously, when you and your team have good accomplishments, you want to recognize them. You want to write them down. You want your management hierarchy to understand them. On the other hand, you don't want to be egotistical. You want to have some humility. You want to say, look, we have some goals. We accomplished our goals. Here's our next goals. Okay, that's very good. You want to make progress. I don't know. You got to be careful because for me, like sometimes there's this thing called the imposter syndrome where you feel like you're not qualified for the thing that you actually are qualified for. That is not really, I don't know if that's humility. That's just something to watch out for because it can get in the way of maybe doing good work. So, for example, if you have imposter syndrome and it causes you to procrastinate, that's not very healthy. So, understand the difference between humility and the imposter syndrome. Okay, let's move on to our next page here, which is from Wikipedia. If I can find my mouse. So, this is servant leadership. So, this is a related concept. Okay. And I learned this concept from one of the upper level managers where I've worked. And it was really interesting to hear about this. So I thought I would find a neutral article that discusses it here. Okay. So the idea behind servant leadership is that it is the goal of the leader to serve. This is different from traditional leadership where the leader's main focus is the thriving of the company or the organization. So this is interesting because what we're doing here is we're going to be putting people first rather than the company or the organization itself. Okay. And this is what I mentioned before, where you're putting the individuals first, then maybe some of the company's strategic team goals second, and of course yourself in terms of productizing or marketing yourself. A servant leader shares power, puts the needs of the employees first, and helps people develop and perform as highly as possible. This is true because basically, if you have a team of 5 people or 10 people or whatever it is, if you make those people stronger as a group by being their manager, by being a leader, and making them all more effective, then, instead of making yourself more effective and you have a 10-person team and you make that team more effective, that's a 10x increase in productivity versus just making yourself more productive. Okay. Instead of the people working to serve the leader, like doing those tasks, get this task done, get these tasks done, do these orders, that's a boss behavior. The leader exists to serve the people. Exactly. So being the tip of the spear on new strategic objectives, figuring out how to do something and then deploying it to your team, doing the hardest work first so your team can do the most interesting work is another good example. As stated by its founder, Robert K. Greenleaf, a servant leader should be focused on, quote, do those served grow as persons? Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servant leaders? Yeah, so one thing that can be difficult when being a manager is how do you define career development for your employees? It's not like a cooking recipe. If I could give a cooking recipe to an employee and say, this is how you reach the next pay grade. Just do these steps. Everybody would just do these steps and everybody in the company would be the CEO. That's not how it works. Every single individual employee has their own goals, their own strengths, their own things they don't want to do, their own plateau level for a certain job. And over time, you need to understand this by working closely with your team, talking to them regularly, and figuring out what can I do as someone's manager to make sure that over time they're doing the things they enjoy doing, they're learning new things, and that over time they will naturally develop and reach that next pay grade plateau potentially, right? So there's no cookbook recipe. This is basically experience-based. And while you're gaining that experience, you want to make the experience as pleasant as possible for your employees, okay? When leaders shift their mindset and serve first, they benefit as well as their employees in that their employees acquire personal growth while the organization grows, as well as due to the employees' growing commitment and engagement. This is what I was saying before. If you have 10 employees, you make them more efficient. That's 10 times more efficient than just making yourself more efficient. Since this leadership style came about, a number of organizations, including Starbucks and Marriott International have adopted this style as their way of leadership. Well, that's nice. As long as Starbucks is paying everybody appropriately, I guess. According to a 2002 study by a couple of people here, Sen and James, servant leadership is being practiced in some of the top-ranking companies, and those companies are highly ranked because of this leadership style and following. Yeah. Further research confirms servant leaders lead others to go beyond the call of duty. Yeah. So a lot of times I'll see bosses will hand out work. And in a lot of organizations, there's more work than the number of human beings that we've hired. So there's no end to the amount of work that a boss manager will throw at you. Okay. They will overload you 24/7, 365. Okay. Until you burn out. That's no good. Now, what can be useful is in very specific situations, like the example I pointed out earlier, where I took a code base, figured out how to translate from one API library to another, and started that work so that my team could pick it up and continue it on into the future. I definitely put in some extra hours on that beyond the normal work week, okay? But that was an isolated incident for a very strategic objective that our team had that was a one-time activity, okay? I'm not doing that all the time. I'm not asking my team to do that all the time. Just every once in a while, there will be something where you know you're going to get great gains out of it if you go a little bit above and beyond. And the rest of the time, you can properly manage your work-life balance, okay? That's what you want to do for a long-term, sustainable career. And then the YouTube page goes on and has a lot more to say about servant leadership. They go through I'm not going to read through all this. They go through the history. You can go here yourself and check it out. Give them a click. This Greenleaf guy came up with this whole thing. Let's see, there's been work on it after Greenleaf's original work. And you can read other articles on the internet about this as well. Okay, here's some critiques. Let's take a look at the critiques just because we want to be fair here. Some researchers noted the lack of empirical evidence for servant leadership. Sure. I mean, any system that you learn in terms of you go take a training class where they figure out like, oh, what are your goals or what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your career objectives? Any sort of classification system, any class you take that does that, it's just a framework. And you have to take it with a grain of salt. You can't just say it's 100%, perfect, okay? You have to take the things out of it that work for you and see if they are useful in your day-to-day basis. I've taken some training classes, I thought, or used some apps that are supposed to help that I found completely useless. I've found others, apps and training classes that I thought had great insight and made me think about things with new perspectives. Okay, and maybe for other people, it's the other way around, and they would like the other material. I don't know. The researchers presented servant leadership as a hierarchical model in a cyclical process. Sure. This consisted of behavioral and relational, this is interesting, vision, services, and relational influence, credibility, trust components. However, this conceptualization made by these researchers did not differ from leadership theories such as transformational leadership. Yeah, I mean, maybe servant leadership and this transformational leadership concept are very similar. I'll have to look into that. I don't know much about it. It could just be two sides of the same coin or, different variants of the same thing. This researcher distinguished servant leadership from three predominant leadership paradigms: the trait, behavioral, and contingency approaches to leadership. Okay, this is very interesting. Pauly's views aligned with transforming leadership, but once again made no distinctions among charismatic, transformational, and servant leadership. Yeah, it may be possible that some of these different techniques are all just as effective as the other ones, or they may just devolve into being the same thing once you get to day-to-day activity. Okay. What is this? Risk and limitations of servant leadership with regard to ethical questions. Oh boy. The risk that servant leader may have too narrow an understanding of service. Okay, yeah, that's true. I mean, my view is that a leader is just another person on the team who's doing some of the technical work. Now, if you're a manager, You may have more of your calendar time devoted to meeting with your employees and helping them manage their tasks, but the rest of your time should be no different than the time that all of your employees are spending doing real work. Whether it's mechanical work, technical work, whatever you want to call it. The leader, who is a manager, should be doing the same type of thing. Servant leadership's ambiguity about morality, the moral content. I don't know what that means. Obviously, everybody should be following some sort of professional code of conduct when they go to work. The fact that servant leadership relies on the moral framework of the followers, okay. I mean, I guess when you're the tip of the spear, when you're at the front of the pulling the sled, with your teammates, I don't know if you're really relying on everybody else's moral framework. The risk that servant leadership without the leader's motivation to serve will remain up in the air. Yeah, that's true. I mean, if you can't commit yourself to some type of servant leadership or good leadership style, and instead of devolving to sort of boss behaviors of just telling people what to do, then yeah, I think you're just going to, like, what are you doing all day? I don't know. Going to meetings? Don't do that. Let's see. Theoretical stuff. Wikipedia is always so sort of erudite, I think. I don't know. But anyway, I think we've hit all the good things here. They link to authentic leadership. We can take a look at that. Yeah, leaders and leadership coaching. I think the key here, guys, is if you become a manager or you're a manager, the number one thing I really recommend is give your employees dedicated time every week to talk to you one-on-one, like an hour in the Outlook calendar every week, guaranteed. You may only need 5 minutes of it. You may use the whole hour and need to add a second hour, okay? But show your employees that you are giving them that time, and show your employees that you can lead by example, that you will be the tip of the spear, and you will solve problems for your employees so that your employees can move faster, deliver their measurable objectives faster, more efficiently, not burn out, and have a great career. And that's really what it's all about. Let's go back to the moose. The moose know what's going on. They're having fun. So just keep these things in mind. And if you have additional ideas, additional links, or additional topics that I need to look into related to servant leadership or being a leader instead of a boss, please put them in the comments section. And I will talk to you all later. This has been Bruce Morgan with The Bruce Morgan Show, Episode 0. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time.